Alicia, Jess and I would like to dedicate this episode to one of our colleagues who recently passed away. She had an impact on all of our nursing careers and we will never forget her.
Two humorous nurses would like to acknowledge the true custodians of the land in which we record our podcast, the Yorta Yorta people.
We pay our respects to elders past and present and extend our respects to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders listening today. Always was, always will be Aboriginal land. Biz Care have proudly partnered with the National Breast Cancer Foundation to start a conversation. When's the last time you checked your breasts? Early detection of breast cancer can start with a simple self-assessment. So check your breasts today and be breast aware.
Two Humorous Nurses with Kelly and Jessica.
The podcast that will pick you up after life has kicked you down.
Welcome to Two Humorous Nurses, where we plan to bring you funny, informal, conversational chat about all things nursing.
Imagine you're sitting at home and suddenly your partner collapses. You call an ambulance and you and your partner's lives are about to change forever. They're going to get a devastating diagnosis that will affect every member of your family. But unfortunately, it isn't going to be the only devastating diagnosis that they receive in a short space of time.
Today is one of our patient experience series. We are talking to Brad and Holley Jones, a young couple who have had more than their fair share of time in hospital, most of it for traumatic reasons and with a rare, mostly unknown condition. This is likely going to be a two-part episode because there is a lot to discuss from both the patient and from the wife/parent perspective.
Brad and Holley, it's great to have you here today. Welcome.
Hello.
Thank you.
Why don't we start with a little bit about who you are, Brad? You want to tell us a little bit about you?
Yeah, so I'm Bradley. I'm 32 years of age. I'm a husband and a father, and I have a few medical conditions.
Just a few, yeah. And Holley?
Hi, so I am obviously Bradley's wife, and we have two young boys together. I'm only 29, and been together for 11 years now.
I know you guys have been together for ages. Yeah,
so long.
Holley used to be Amelia's. She was like one of Amelia's first educators at daycare when she first
and
when we
Willow
first
and
moved.
Dixie also.
Yeah, it was too.
Yeah,
Amelia loved Holley. Yeah,
everybody loved Holley.
I still remember the day Amelia came in with her little moo moo.
Oh yeah, she still has little moo moo. So Brad has, as I said, was diagnosed with a devastating diagnosis, and I wrote that term, and then I was like, oh, it really is like a devastating diagnosis. Can you tell us about the first time that you went to hospital and how you were diagnosed with your condition and what your condition is?
Yep. So I'm officially diagnosed with VEDS, which stands for vascular Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. And I also, the other health condition is CML, chronic myeloid leukemia. The very first time I was actually at home on the loo, doing my business, and all of a sudden I started to get really lightheaded, blurred vision, started to feel a bit unstable sitting on the toilet, chest pain, which was radiating from the front of the chest area all the way through to the back, then running straight up the back of my spine to my neck and shoulders. So Holley, from memory, I think was at work at the time.
I was.
I was at home. I wasn't at work that day for whatever reason. I was at home with our eldest son, and he was actually close by. So I managed to get up and call Holley at work, and she straight away said, "Oh, you better ring the ambulance." A bit silly at the time, but actually rang me father for a second opinion. And he pretty much agreed, yeah, you better ring an ambulance. So at the time, for me, I've obviously never had any issues before, so I was a little bit unsure what was going on. But I was well aware of what heart attack symptoms and that could be. And to me at the time, that's what I was thinking was going on, because obviously a bit of family history prior to my events.
How old were you, Brad, when this happened?
How old was I?
So Hunter was 2 years old.
Yeah.
You would have been 27.
Yeah.
And from what I remember back then, you were pretty active. Like, you played footy, you ran, you were like pretty
So
fit and
very-
healthy.
Yeah.
I was playing footy for the local footy club and working, and I've always been a pretty active person. So it was very unusual for something like that to occur.
Yeah.
So at the time, I followed the advice that I was given by my dad and my partner and called the ambulance. They assessed me over the phone, which they do with everyone, and the ambulance comes straight out. And Holly, I think you rushed home from work, didn't you?
Yeah.
Holly rushed home from work. And the ambos, they took me in the ambulance and said, "Oh, we'll take you to Echuca." That was their destination at the time. So we flew over there, and I was admitted straight away through emergency. And they started to do all the tests they do if someone comes in with, I don't know, heart attack symptoms, I suppose. Anyway, so they did like all your troponin levels and whatnot. And after quite a bit of rigorous, I can't say that word. That word.
We get it. We get
they
it.
were thorough. They were thorough with all the testing. But at the time, they couldn't really come back with anything. Everything seemed to come back pretty normal.
All they could say was that your troponin levels had risen.
Yeah, that was the only thing, but they couldn't suspect anything else. It was a bit of an odd one. Obviously, being 27 at the time, coming in with that, it's very unusual for someone so healthy. So anyway, they what do they do? They
referred you to a cardiologist in Melbourne who had previously already seen your family members because of your family history.
Yeah, that's
and
right.
they just said, follow up with the cardiologist in 2 weeks' time, but you didn't even make it to 2 weeks before you had another major dissection.
Yeah.
So you didn't have any scans, no chest X-rays, like nothing.
No,
in that
not at the time. Because it wasn't like, obviously now I get all that done because of my situation, but at the time
exactly.
it didn't really make sense to do that with me.
Sure.
Not a typical presentation.
It sort of left them a bit baffled over in Echuca. So, and it was a first time event too, which is understandable for them as well. So,
Mm.
Yeah.
and then a few weeks later, that was the start of the second event. So,
Gosh, it must have been terrifying.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was.
I was pregnant at the time too.
Yeah.
I remember just thinking, oh my God, like what is going on?
yeah, it was a bit of the unknown.
Scary.
Yeah.
You said you had family history. Just give us a quick rundown of that before we move.
Yeah, so we had I have an auntie who passed away at an early age. And just she passed away from pretty sure it was a dissection in the carotid artery in her neck.
Yeah.
And then that was a serious one, and she unfortunately passed away due to that.
And did they know she had VEDS?
No,
Okay.
no one
Knew
before me knew at all.
Right.
So it was the unknown, and then I think it was 2 years later, my mother, she passed away due to she actually had a heart attack at home, a pretty good heart attack, and she was taken to the Shepparton Hospital, where then she was rushed down to Melbourne. They ended up stenting her. I think it was maybe 3 times. I think they might have stented her due to the heart attack. So the stents and all that went well. It was a success, and she was meant to make a full recovery. And then that night after the stents, she had what they class as an implosion with the heart, where pretty much from the inside out just goes. And the stents obviously didn't hold, and she from what we were told, she passed away in her sleep
from dissection.
Dissection and then implosion. So,
Oh gosh.
At the time, it was like, they didn't know anything about all this family history, so they just put it down to, it was unfortunate and really bad luck. And
it was looked at as two sisters had died, and it was just a really bad coincidence.
There was no dots joined.
Yeah. And then, of course, you have your first incident and you're like, well, maybe I have a cardiac history. I'm going to have cardiac problems. And then a couple of weeks later, you have your second event. Do you want to tell us about that?
Yeah, so the second one, very straightforward, this one. Like, I wasn't even on the loo for this one. I was actually on the couch just watching a bit of TV, and straight away got that blurred vision, dizziness, headache, chest pain radiating from the front to the back. Similar setup to the last time, very similar to what they characterize as heart attack symptoms. So obviously with the second time, I thought, this is very similar to that first. So this time we rang the ambulance straight away, and this time they took me straight over to Shepparton, which they did troponin levels and all the, the generic things they do. And this time it come back, the troponin levels were quite high. And I'm pretty sure with this time they did do the CT scans with the contrast, which lit up all my vessels. And he come back and goes, oh, we've found you've had a couple of dissections. They couldn't really give me much more, but they, were saying, your troponin level's really high, so you've had a bit of heart damage, they believed. And they were a bit worried. So this time they actually teed up the plane, the ambulance plane. I don't know what they officially call it, but at the Shepparton Kyella Airport, they jumped me on that and flew me straight to Melbourne, and I ended up at the St. Vincent's Hospital in Melbourne. I was on it was either the stroke ward or the vascular ward, something like that, where they did some more tests and did the rundown, and that's when I found out I had a dissection in the left groin in one of the arteries branching off that. Was that the only one hole I had?
And you had a dissection in your aorta.
Yeah.
And I might just add to that. That was the first time that you had a dissection that you you couldn't respond to me, because I had gotten out of the shower with Hunter and I was saying to you, Brad, can you get Hunter dressed? I got to go to work. And you were just sitting there and adding Jerry, and I'm like, Brad, like, get Hunter dressed, I gotta go.
Yeah.
And you just were sitting there, and then you were able to, and then you just looked at me and you're like, hold, it's happening, happening. And he's like, I thought I was gonna die. And I said, what? And he's like, my chest. And you're like, I thought I was gonna die, because he couldn't talk, his eyes like vision went. He was in so much more pain this time, he couldn't stand up.
Just to add on that, now that Holly's brought back my memory a bit, I actually at the time stood up and I was near the heater.
You couldn't.
And I felt like I was actually going to pass out. So I quickly sat down before I had the chance to pass out. And after that time of sitting in the chair, Holly, I remember that Holly come in, was like, Brad, can you help Hunter get dressed? But it was like I was trapped in my own body. I couldn't actually respond. All I could do was look forward and sort of look at her. I couldn't talk. Couldn't move. It was like you
couldn't lift your arms. And that was something that you said to me, was my arms, I couldn't move my arms. The pain was insane. And I remember the ambulance came so fast this time, and I'm pretty sure they did a little ECG there, and they were like, you need to go straight to hospital. But the thing is, when you had gone to hospital and you had your CT done with the contrast, they initially had told us, the doctor had come and told us that they didn't find anything. And we were sitting there really puzzled. And then 20 minutes later, he came rushing back in and said, oh, I'm so sorry. Actually, my mistake. We actually found you've had 2 major dissections. I got someone from St. Vincent's to have a look over it just to double check. And they've actually found you've had 2 dissections. So you then were flown really quickly. So it happened from, you're fine, there's nothing wrong, we don't know why you've got troponin again, to, oh, whoops, sorry, that's been misread. You've actually need to go now. And you were gone. You were taken. And I had Hunter there going, what's going on? Like, you were just
The
gone
crazy
then.
thing is too, when that nurse, I think it was, that come into the Shepparton hospital and was telling me that information, he'd done like put the needle in the arm to get bloods or whatever. But
don't remind me.
It went real haywire. For whatever reason, blood just started squirting out everywhere. And
all over the wall.
It looked like a murder scene. Like, there was blood everywhere. There was blood on the side of the bed, blood on the wall, and this information with blood going everywhere.
Oh God, how did I forget?
It literally looked like a murder scene. Like, as I was getting wheeled out to go to the airport, there's like a cleaner in there, like cleaning the walls with that was crazy.
Oh my God.
Did you know that in Australia, 1 in 7 women are diagnosed with breast cancer in their lifetime? 57 Australians a day are diagnosed. While mammograms are free if you're over 40, you actually aren't notified about them until you're 50. So check your breasts at home every month or with a medical professional, because early detection saves lives. Biz Care have proudly partnered with the National Breast Cancer Foundation to support their goal of 0 deaths from breast cancer. So join them in the inspiring movement to raise awareness and ignite discussions around breast health and getting your breasts checked. So head to biz-care.com and join their fight. Go pink with Biz Care. The breast things in life are worth getting checked.
It was pretty hectic times, and then ended up in Melbourne, and
you spent 3 weeks there.
Yeah, that was a long stint in Melbourne for that.
You had a heart monitor on. You weren't allowed to get up from your bed.
And then obviously with the family history, that's when they decided, right, maybe there's something a bit more going on here. So they looked at the family history and they all come together and they said, we want to put you through genetic testing due to the family history to try and work out what is going on, because this is very abnormal for a young, fit, healthy guy to be having this. And it really had everyone puzzled. They didn't know what was going on and why this was occurring. And then that was the next step. It was then we were booked in for genetic testing, and that was through the Royal Melbourne Hospital for the genetic testing. So
how long took a while from memory. Yeah.
Sorry, you go, Jess.
We asked the same question.
Yeah.
How long? Yeah, it took a while from what I remember.
Yeah,
probably felt like a lot longer for you guys.
Well, you were diagnosed in January 2019.
Yep.
And I remember we were surprised because they called us and said we've got them earlier than expected.
Yeah.
Because I'm pretty sure it was meant to be a 4-month wait.
Yeah, but they ended up calling us.
I think the boys. So Isaac was 2 months old when he was tested, and Hunter was 2. So Isaac was born October. So December would have been Christmas time.
Yeah.
And we got it back within January.
Yeah, and the crazy thing about that was when they actually called us, I had a real bad gut feeling that it was negative news that was coming back, because the lady on the phone, you could tell in her voice, the geneticist, you could tell in her voice something was up, because she said, "Oh, look, I don't."
Hold on, I'll put you there.
Oh, okay.
That's a mistake. Backtrack. So it wasn't January 2019 because that's when the boys were tested.
Yeah, that's correct.
So hold on, go back. So he would have been tested 2018. Okay, we'll start that again. So you had genetic testing would have been early 2018 because I was still pregnant.
Yeah.
And at the time,
did they, when they said they were testing like your genetics, did they have an idea in mind of what it could be? Like, did they say to you, it could be VEDS, it could be something else, whatever?
Yeah, so VEDS wasn't even on the radar. I should backtrack that when I was actually in the St. Vincent's Hospital, the whole team, like the whole team of doctors and specialists, they were puzzled. They didn't know what was going on or what it could be. And this is really funny now that I talk about this, is one of the head vascular surgeons come in and was talking to me, and he goes, "Look, we don't know what's going on." He goes, "We're going to get genetic testing to try and work out if there's anything." But he actually said to me at the time, he goes, "Look, don't be surprised if your genetic testing results come back with nothing at all." He goes, "It wouldn't surprise me if you've got no genetic problems at all." And I said to him, well, I said, I know I shouldn't do this, but obviously with no one knowing and, you know, I'm trying to work out what is going on. I actually Googled, I did Dr. Google. I Googled, and it was actually Holly's mum had mentioned this vascular Ehlers-Danlos syndrome due to all the symptoms.
Yeah.
So I actually Googled this syndrome myself then. And as I was reading on Google, it was like a checklist. Like I was ticking off in my brain going, yep, that sounds like me. Yes, yes, yes. That's everything that's going on. So then I went back to this vascular surgeon and said, you know I shouldn't, but I did Google and I come across this rare genetic syndrome. I said, is it possible that I got this? And he pretty much laughed at me and said, mate,
God.
no, that's very rare. I highly doubt you got that. And he goes, don't be surprised if you come back all clear. And I said, but what's the possibility? He goes, nah, it's very rare. It's very uncommon. You will not have that. I guarantee you that.
Someone's got to have it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
and from memory, they
people
then
get rare
went-
things.
Yeah, that's right. And from memory, the geneticists then went and tested you for 20 different genetic conditions.
Yep. And one of them was Marfan's
Syndrome.
I hope I'm saying it right. Marfan's
Yeah.
syndrome and EDS. EDS was on the radar, but my particular one is so uncommon that they don't really, because there's 13 to 14 different subtypes of EDS.
Yeah.
Which is Ehlers-Danlos.
Yeah, which is Ehlers-Danlos.
And some of them are really common. Like some of them are
common.
super
Yeah.
common. Like
That's it, Kelly. And that's the thing too, is so many people have heard of Ehlers-Danlos syndrome and they just think straight away, stretchy skin, my hypermobility.
Yep.
But no one has actually really heard of vascular Ehlers-Danlos.
Yeah, so if you put it on a scale, there's like the common types like hypermobility and all that. Which is heads. They're mostly common. And then you go right down to the other end and VEDS, and there's quite a few others that are actually worse off than VEDS as well. So
oh God.
Yeah, so it's pretty
I
crazy.
remember when you told us that you had it and I Googled and I thought, oh God. I think I actually said to you, Holly, after another hospital admission, I was like, can you guys just get married now? Like, don't wait. Like, can you please just go and get married in the courthouse or
and
something?
We did.
And plan your wedding. I know you're going to get married, but like, just get married. Like, don't wait. Like, because in my head, I was like, oh, this is like in my nurse brain where I catastrophize everything. I was just like, please, I know you're waiting for the wedding, but like, please go get married. Like,
I know. But literally, it went on for such a long time. It literally, it felt like every 6 weeks you would have a new dissection, whether it was dissections in your lungs, dissections in your arteries, dissections in your aorta, like
and mind you, while all this is going on, like I personally felt, am I being a hypochondriac? Like I really thought, is this all in my head? And it's like, it's nothing.
Were you being made to feel that way by ambulances or by nursing staff in ED or doctors, or like were you being questioned about your symptoms?
To tell you the truth, the ambulance, the paramedics were fine. They never judged me. They always commended me for getting the help. It was more the head honchos at the hospital. It was more the specialists in their fields. And that sort of, would say, it's probably a no-nothing thing. When I was in St. Vincent's, one head honcho doctor or specialist actually accused me of being a cocaine addict.
Oh, God.
He actually said people who take cocaine regularly are prone to having the dissections.
Yeah.
And he pretty much said that to my face. Mate, I'm not like a hardcore druggie.
Was this after your diagnosis as well?
And at the time I was very very skinny. I looked sick.
So because you were sick. Like
you were sick. Yeah,
you were. Yeah.
But he pretty much said to me, "Are you a drug addict? Do you do cocaine?"
Yeah.
Oh my God.
I listed drugs, and I took real offense to that. I said, "Mate, I am not a druggie.
Yeah.
Like, yes, I might enjoy a beer here or there.
Yeah, but
no, I'm not a hardcore druggie." And I took quite offense to that because he pretty much accused me of being a cocaine addict.
And that was because they just kept saying, "But you're so young. We don't know why this is happening to you. It's only people who do cocaine."
Yeah. So I was getting thrown things around like that, and you get the odd nurse and that would just like sort of laugh it off and go, oh, maybe you're just tired or maybe you're stressed, and
it's not anxiety.
it's not maybe it's anxiety attack. Maybe you've just got a bit going on, and
you're like, it probably is all of those things, but also like my arteries are dissecting within me. Like, can we just discuss that? Like,
yes.
Yeah. But like even with the proof, you were still getting doctors and specialists just sort of brushing it off and going, oh well, you'll be right, like.
Do you think that's because they didn't understand the severity of your disease?
Yeah, and especially before, like, I had the results of the genetic diagnosis. They were saying, obviously, we don't know what it is, so they were just sort of like, they were just brushing the symptoms off, brushing whatever off, and it was really frustrating. As a patient, it was so frustrating, and you sort of second guess yourself at the time. Yeah. Still, like, is this all in my head? Like, am I being a hypochondriac? But at the time, you're getting these results back, and then that's proving to yourself, the proof's in the pudding. You've got these results. You've had dissections. Your troponin levels are rising. So it's not all for nothing, these hospitalizations.
There's so many.
And back to the genetic testing. So the day we went down, we meet the geneticist, and she was a lovely person. We go in and she's real watery in the eyes, and I thought, oh, this isn't good. And she's almost crying as she's saying hello to us, and I straight away go, oh, this is not good news. And she turns to me and goes, oh, I'm so sorry. She goes, you've actually got one of the worst ones. She goes, you've got a fault in your what is it called?
In your collagen, your col3A1.
So the col3A1, which is your type 3 collagen gene, we found an issue with that, and that's the main thing of that is a thing called vascular Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. So we just sort of, at the time, we just looked at each other and thought, what the hell? And I sort of thought, that's what I bloody said to that surgeon or specialist.
Yeah.
Pretty much laughed at my face. But this poor geneticist, like, she was in that much shock giving the news. She was almost bawling. Like,
she's probably never given anyone that news before.
No, as she said, she's given it like once or twice in her whole career.
And
can we just stop for 1 second? Can you tell us what vascular Ehlers-Danlos syndrome is? Like,
vascular Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, it's a life-threatening genetic condition. Most of the time, it tends to come from a parent, and then you've got a 50-50 chance of that parent then passing it down. But then there is also cases where you can be just a spontaneous family member who it just randomly starts off with. So it's a fault in the col3A1 gene, which is your type 3 collagen, which type 3 collagen affects your vessels, your skin, pretty much a lot of things in your body. So your organs. So some of the issues someone with VEDS can have is obviously aortic and arterial dissections, which I've personally experienced quite a lot of. You're more prone to heart attacks, stroke. The real serious side of things can be a spontaneous organ rupture. So any organ can just decide to rupture.
Like with your mum's heart.
Yeah. Yeah. So, which then obviously, if it's a good enough, rupture, it can lead to devastating blood loss, which can lead to loss of life.
And I think too, to mention is vascular Ehlers-Danlos is such a spontaneous genetic condition. It can affect anyone at any time of their life. You don't have any symptoms. You'll have a medical episode. And there is, some people that'll have it and they won't have issues for a long time, or, you might have children who don't ever get affected by it till later on in life, but it's so spontaneous. And I think that's probably the worst part about it. You just don't know when things can happen.
So obviously I was 27 at the time of the diagnosis, but during my actual childhood to teenage years to that point of time, I had issues, especially with soft tissue injuries playing football. But at the time, obviously, without knowing I had VEDS, you just brush it off and go, oh, maybe it's you're growing or you got a tight back, so your hamstrings. But a common thing for me was when I was playing football and cricket was tearing my hamstrings or pulling the hamstring. And I put it down to maybe, it was just growing and my back was tight. So, but as we've found out now, that was a reason because of the faulty collagen. My hamstrings just could not handle the amount of sport I was playing and the pressure of all that.
In reality, you're probably lucky to have made it to 27 without any dissections, given the amount of sport and contact sport you were doing and playing. And
well, this is the thing. Obviously, without knowing that I was having dissections, I may have had issues, but then not thought of it too much. And when you don't know what's going on, I probably brushed it to the side. So there is a possibility that issues could have happened or arisen, but I've just brushed it off. And luckily, it wasn't a life-threatening situation, which could have ended, bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think from the geneticist then, because we were sitting there holding our two boys, that she just said, well, you have vascular Ehlers-Danlos, and that means your children could too. We need to get them straight in for genetic testing at the Royal Children's. And we were like, whoa, okay.
Yeah, it's when they turn around and said, being the parent of the kids, you've got a 50-50 chance of passing it down. And I might add, once I had my diagnosis, the geneticists actually said to me, this is what we believe your mum and her sister they had VEDS as well, because it's too much of a coincidence. And they put it down to me mum having VEDS, which is how I inherited it. So
which has been confirmed via genetic testing through other family members. I guess that first initial geneticist appointment to give you the news opened a massive can of worms, because you then had to give a letter to all your family who has had parents pass away and say, look, this is the genetic condition I have. They believe it's linked to your parent passing away and, my parent, and we're cousins and we're, family and whatever else. So you should get tested too, if you'd like to.
Yeah. So...
And the Royal Melbourne did all that for free. They covered all the genetic appointments.
And that's when it gets crazy, is when when people were coming back in family with positive results of VEDS, it's sort of a link in the chain was added, because then you're like, oh, so that's how they obviously got it passed down through their parent, through their side. And then, that's how me and a couple of my sisters received the VEDS gene. And then that's how my boys received it, because I passed it on down to them.
Feel being the one to find out.
I personally, I felt really guilty. It was not the best news to, pass on a letter to extended family, say, hey, look, I've got this condition. There's a possibility that you guys may have it too. You've been referred to genetic testing. They highly recommend you get it. There was a lot of guilt. Like, you don't want to put that on any family member to say, hey, you may have this. I've just found out. And you also don't know how family members are going to react to that news too. You don't want to be hated as a family member for passing that on. But then at the same time, you've got to come from the point of view, if there is a chance of them having this condition, I thought, the way I thought it was, wouldn't you like to know so you could prepare yourself and be aware of the situation?
Especially if they have kids as well.
Definitely.
If there are some, obviously it's quite a genetic condition that's passed on maybe more easily than some others. I don't know how genetics works, but I mean, if your mum and auntie, the likelihood is they both had it. So then, and you have it, and if you've got sisters that end up having it, and then your boys both have it, like that, it seems to be passed on quite easily. And I understand how, it's not your fault that other people might have it. It's not your parents' fault either. Like, obviously genetics are genetics, but I can understand how stressful that must have been for you. You're going through it. You're having dissections regularly. You still have no idea what the treatment is, or now you're being told that you have this horrible condition that, will limit your life. At some point, you have no idea when that's going to be. You've got 2 young kids, and then you're like giving this news to your family and being like, I'm really sorry, but you might have this too. And, like, I get that they can't shoot the messenger, but I could get how you must feel so overwhelmed.
The scary thing about that too was that obviously with the family members that passed away at early ages, that didn't really hit off too well because they were quite young. So when obviously then we were told that like they say for the vets, a male is a medium age of survival for a male is 48 years of age, and then the median age for a female is 52. So going off that, my 2 family members didn't make it, and they were the females. So that's when it really sent like a bit of a shockwave to you. You're like,
through the family.
The family hadn't gone, too well with the lifespan. Yeah. So what is this going to be a recurring pattern?
And it was also too, I mean, telling family members, look, like we have confirmation. You've got the first person who's died, some of their children is positive. Bradley's mum and a couple of his sisters and him are positive. But then also his grandpa, who is nearly 98 years old, came back positive with VEDS, but has a mosaic form of VEDS. So he'll never be affected by it, but he has passed it through. So it started with somewhere along the line, his grandpa. So it was confirmed that the grandpa has VEDS. He's had children. He's passed it through to his daughters. His daughters, so Brad's mum and his auntie, they passed it on to their children. And so it was confirmed that they 100% had VEDS because there was no other way for Bradley and some of his sisters and his cousins to have gotten it.
And might I add that in each, on the auntie side, not her whole children were positive.
Only some.
Only a couple. Yeah. And then same with my side. It was me and a couple of sisters, but then I had some sisters who weren't positive. So it's really 50. It's that 50,
exactly.
50, how it plays out. And going back to, obviously how you feel, like
it was so hard.
When that's all happening, you feel so guilty because you're like, it's a major interruption on their lives.
And we had a lot of backlash of, I don't want to know, or I don't think that's true.
Some family members didn't
go down well.
And to this day, some still aren't 100% with it, even though
ignorance is bliss, though, isn't it? Like, if sometimes the reality is too hard to digest.
But at the end of the day, you've got that confirmation, you got the paperwork, it's legit. Some people believe
they all process things differently.
Yeah, and everyone takes on things differently. So but it was very stressful at that time, giving that news to other family members, and you're like, have I ruined their life? But then in the back of your mind, you're like, at the back of your mind, you're sort of like, well, hopefully, if the worst come to worst and they do have it, hopefully it will, lead them in good stead and they can get checked and monitored and they're aware of the situation, which then might work out.
They can also make life choices.
Yeah.
We had 2 children without knowing.
Yeah.
They have the choice now to have children and remove the chromosome with IVF or not have children at all and also look after themselves. Whereas we didn't have a choice.
I think as well, like, even the ones that don't want to get tested, if something was to happen, they have the knowledge still to say, well, actually, my family have this genetic, I've not been tested, but the chances are if I'm having this event, maybe I do have it, and can we do something? That VED stuff is so interesting. And I remember, because you guys lived in the same town as me, and I said this when we first jumped on the Zoom, like, I can remember hearing like the chopper land on the oval in town and just thinking, oh shit,
is Brad okay? And like reaching out, because everyone was so aware. You're so open about it, and you are so open. And we're going to talk about this a bit later in the episode about your advocacy for vets in Australia.
Well, that wraps up part 1 of a devastating diagnosis with Brad and Holley Jones. Their story is just incredible, and I love how well Brad is just talking about everything that's happened to him. He was a little concerned at the start, worried that his memory might let him down, but Holley was by his side to help answer it and fill in those blanks. We hope you come back next week to listen to part 2, because we learn that Brad not only has one devastating diagnosis, but he has 2. So don't forget to leave us a rating on whatever platform you listen to us on, and follow us on Instagram at 2 Humorous Nurses Podcast. You can also follow Brad at his, which is Veds, VEDS _zebra on Instagram. I'll link everything in the show notes, and we will see you next week. Bye.